welcome back everybody for the second day. I've just got a few housekeeping bits and pieces I want to go over with you. Some really nice things actually. Everyone who's attended today and yesterday is going to be sent this, which is the Alexander Group book, Sales Comp Perspectives. And this is my favorite. This is a little pocket guide. David actually wrote this, and it's got sections on challenges, sections on best practices, and sections on resources. It's really, really nice. That's a great one. Everyone here is also going to be emailed a PDF version of the speaker slides. You'll get those over the next few days, and a form just to give us your feedback. Anything you want us to cover next year, please put that down. And also, I should have said yesterday, we have a networking part of Hopin that you can use if you want to. If you go to the right-hand side of your screen, there's a People tab. And if you click on that, and then search for any delegate you want to speak to, or you maybe want to network with, and you can just send them a message. So that's the thing worth knowing. Don't forget the expo booths. They've all got little competitions, and statistically, you've all got a really high chance of winning, actually. So definitely enter them. If you go before 3 o'clock, you've got to go before 3. Varicent offering Amazon gift cards. BCom, I think it's BCom who are doing a really cool Sonos speaker, and Open Symmetry have also got lots of Amazon cards to give away as well. So that's me done. Oh, also one other thing, David is going to be in the Alexander Group booth just to answer questions on your pay programs between 4 and 5. So if you've got anything you want answered, a bit of advice on anything, do go and see him and he'll help you out. So that's it from me. I'll see you later to announce the competition winners at the end of the event, and enjoy the afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the second day of the Sales Compensation Summit 2021, hosted by eReward, and thank you to Paul Thompson and Amanda Browning for making this experience possible. And as I opened up yesterday, I salute you. I congratulate you for developing your professional competencies in the space of sales compensation. There are many reasons why sales departments and their salespeople succeed. Sales comp is just one of those things, but getting it right is an important professional objective that we should have as we contribute to the success of our revenue organizations. And I have confidence in you. I believe in you that you can step forward and help your organization design programs, lead change. There's always this very big concern about adoption and change management and getting leadership support. And so I'm a believer in you, and I believe that with your interest in the subject and your desire to learn more, you'll have a very important impact on your organization. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Cichelli with the Alexander Group. I'm your moderator, and I also have presentations I'm going to be doing today for you also. So let me just summarize what we learned yesterday. So we had several speakers, including myself, okay, and I started off by saying, guess what? Sales compensation programs are really powerful devices. However, they need to change. They need to change on a regular basis because you're changing the way that your customers buy, the way that you configure your jobs, the way that you measure, how you go to market. All those things are in flux. And each year, it behooves you to ask the question, should I change the compensation program? So I know that's pretty unsettling for some that says, gee, I'm going to upset my sales force. But again, commit to the money, not to the mechanics. And then we had another interesting presentation about improving administration. We had David Fish of SCC and Matt Blanchard of Varicent. And and David is a finance guy. Getting the numbers right, you might have a great design, but if you don't get the numbers right and you don't have reporting that the people can see, you really only have half the equation. And then Alexandria from BCom talked to us about making sure that we're really holistic and we're not just thinking about sales compensation, that there's a total environment that our salespeople, our employees live within. And yes, We need good administration, but we also have to answer the question. So that's the answer. What's the problem? Why are we doing what we're doing? And then I thought we had a really interesting engagement with Jeremy Wilson of Keyloop and Jamie Riley of the Alexander Group talking about design. Now, I think the big takeaway from that presentation was two things. One, you need a process. So you need a process that you do through assessment, design, and then program design, and then implementation. But also, I think what Jeremy really emphasized was stakeholder engagement and involvement. And that is the process of all those leaders who's responsible for their sales organizations, getting them involved early in the process, having them participate in interviews, maybe even be part of a design team. So not only do we need a process, but we need leadership engagement. So with that, I thought we got some really good pointers from yesterday. Additionally, I'm a big fan of our vendors. First of all, they're supporting our program, making this possible. But they also, I'm encouraging you to go visit their booths because you can get to meet some people. Plus, you can also win at a very high odd chance. You have very high odds of winning. It's better than buying a lottery ticket because there's a lot of gift opportunities available there. So I encourage you to stop by and visit. And my view about anytime there's a vendor, of course. Maybe they're trying to sell me something. You know what? I consider them information sources. And so I find it of value to get to know these types of folks so that so that I'm more competent and knowledgeable about what's available in the marketplace. Okay. So let me talk about today. We have 3 sessions today. I'm going to start off with what's a presentation called Building Codes. And what that really is the underlying principles that are used to design sales compensation programs. I'm going to tell you it's a little instructional in nature, so I'm not going to torture you as an instructional teacher would. But I'm going to kind of give you these overarching codes that are possible. Then we're going to visit with DSM and that would be Misha Bijol and Andy Mills of Open Symmetry. And really, this example that we're going to hear is, should I have an outside company, consulting firm, help me select an SPM vendor and install that? And so you're going to hear a case example, a case example about how that's done. And so that's something that you should kind of keep in mind, like as you're thinking about automation solutions. And then finally, and I think this is a really interesting subject, and I'm very curious about it. I write about it, I investigate it, and that is the revolution of digital selling and how it's impacting our sales organizations. Now, the add-on comment then, it also affects how sales compensation. But there's an interesting perspective that says the history of sales organizations has been always about sales, and there's been appropriate lip service about what happens to the customer. We got to get in front of the customer, we got to sell to the customer. Well, the digital people, the digital selling people say, no, you got to talk about the buyer journey. And so there's this initial contact. They do a lot of research on their own, and they want to know about the product before they even talk to a salesperson. So if you start to think about how the customers are interacting with the digital population, with the digital tools, maybe that's going to change the nature of our sales jobs and consequently change the nature of how we compensate people. And so that is a very, very active subject, and I really encourage you. That will be Matt Greenstein and Jamie Riley of the Alexander Group. And I think they have some pretty good perspectives on the subject. So that will be at the end of the day. And then Amanda will come back and tell us who our drawing winners are. And so stick around for that too. Okay, so let's get into my presentation. And my presentation is sales compensation building codes. Okay, now what does that mean, building codes? Okay, so a building code, as you can imagine, is a set of rules that are used to build buildings. And so if you're if you're in a new country like America, all of our buildings kind of follow a set of codes. That is like the electrical. Let me give you an example. I'm in a room here in California in which I'm looking around, and there's a door handle. Every door handle is at 36 inches. And I'm sorry, it's not in centimeters, but it's at 36 inches. And the light switch is at 42, and the outlet is at 12. And no matter where I go, And any building I go into, those numbers are always the same. So what does that mean? That means that there's a set of underlying principles that actually affect the design of this room. So what I'm going to share with you today is I'm going to share with you those building codes. Now, do you have to follow them? No, but there's implications if you don't, okay? Now, why is that of value to you as a designer? Because no matter where you are, the job is located, if all you have to do is ask the same set of principal questions about the job, and you can come up with a very good sales compensation design for that job. And so if you're at a corporate level and your responsibility for worldwide sales compensation, absolutely, definitely have to have a set of building codes in which we're going to call principles, sales compensation principles, so that your stakeholders on a worldwide basis are following the same principles. Yes, there are going to be regulatory issues in different countries and different types of practices, and maybe some philosophical issues or perspectives at your company. All of those will influence the final design. However, these underlying building codes will actually give you the way to guide and make decisions. And I'm going to give you a framework for thinking through those and getting them in your head. But if I actually came to visit with you and said, so you're in charge of sales comp for the corporation, show me your building codes or show me your sales compensation principles that you use to design plans. And I'm talking about, whether they're salespeople or overlay specialists or pre-sales engineers, or even our service people, there would be a question, is this an appropriate, what's the appropriate design? So with that, let me start by saying also, so this is educational material. And back at the end of this presentation, I will share with you how you can learn more about sales compensation, whether if you want to take e-learning classes or books or things like that. And I'll share that with you at the end of the session. So again, some of the material is a little on the dense side. So we're not here trying to learn every word on the page. I'm going to try to make the key point. But what you should be listening for is something like this. Okay, so what did David just say? He said, I need an eligibility rule. Okay, and that eligibility rule will tell me which jobs will be eligible for which types of sales compensation programs. Got it. Okay, I need a rule on pay mix, how to set the pay mix. And I'm going to give you some pointers. You might say, well, it's all done by local markets. It is not, okay? It is actually done by the principles that you're going to adopt. Oh, what about upside opportunity, which we call leverage? So those underlying principles are sort of, and you can modify these principles for your own company so that maybe you don't want the door height at 36 inches, maybe you want it at 35. That's okay, okay. So I'm going to move through it kind of quickly. I'm trying to stay above the details because the details could get us all lost and we could have elongated conversations. But you're welcome to raise questions in the comments. And if we do have time at the end, we will take a look at those questions. Okay. All right. So sales compensation principles. What are the building codes? They're underlying design principles. Can one set of principles apply to all industries? And the answer is yes. Can the principles cover on a global basis? Yes. Can they apply to both small and large companies? Yes. Can companies adopt their own interpretation of the standard principles? And the answer is also yes. Now, a couple of things will alter these principles. Your own philosophy, for example, if you say, we're not really interested in individual rewards, we're really interested in a collective success of the organization, well, then your philosophy will displace these principles, okay? So we're going to classic sales compensation design. All right, so with that, let's get started. Right away, I need to give you some vocabulary words. You probably already know these. It's just I've organized it on the one page. So there's multiple types of variable compensation programs. And on this chart are 5 different, and these are the same variable compensation programs that you would find on a worldwide basis. And it's just not for salespeople. So for those of you in total comp, if you're in the HR department, you know these programs. If you're in sales operations, you might have some familiarity with these. But let me do this so I can give you the vocabulary. And we're going to focus on a couple of these because a couple of them apply to sales departments. So if I take a look at the target rate one on the far left-hand side, this is known for producers, okay? That's an expression about a type of sales job known as a producer sales job. And a producer sales job is like financial advisors, real estate agents, stockbrokers, You know, those types of jobs in which the person is the producer, life insurance, okay? So those are target rate, and we're not talking about those jobs today, okay? We're not talking, because it's very simple. What is the commission rate for selling a house? And it's pretty well standard, okay? So we're not going to be spending a lot of time, or hardly any time, on the producer plans. Most of us have what's called sales representatives, and I will come back to that expression in a minute. So the target rate systems have no target pay objective. There is no OTE. There is no market rate. There's just the commission rate. Now, over to the other categories of incentive programs that have a target compensation level. And that's that solid line through the middle of the page. And that solid line says, this is what the job is worth. And then we have a couple of methodologies. Now, I'm actually going to go all the way to the right and just talk a little bit the no risk programs. So we have a couple of add-on. The dark blue is the base salary. We have a couple of add-on programs. So one is gain sharing plans, and gain sharing plans are everybody participates, and they're usually worth between 3 and 5% of the base salary, okay? And it's an additional money at the end of the year. Everybody gets it. It's for doing well. And in some countries, it's mandated as a 13th check. The add-on plans are plans where we have an effective base salary, but we want to give people some more money, but we don't want to put it in their base salary. These are popular during periods of low wage inflation. And in some countries, that's true today, like in the US. And so these are like lump sum payments that are made for individual accomplishment or some team objective, and they're usually worth 5 to 8% on top of the annual wage inflation rate. Now, let me talk about the two at-risk programs. The two at-risk programs are the 2X cap design and the 3X uncapped design. The 2X cap design, you actually know this plan. It's frequently used for management incentive programs, MIP programs. So if you are a vice president of the company or a director level, you'll have a salary and you'll have a 30% bonus opportunity. And guess what? If you do really well, you might get up to 60%. That's called a 2X cap plan. Now, there are actually some sales organizations that actually use 2X cap plans. It's just philosophically how they want to pay their salespeople. They don't want to have a lot of upside opportunity, and they don't want to have any type of blowout payment. And so you might say, well, isn't that based upon a country culture? No, it is not. And even though a lot of country managers would tell you that, we're quite different than those people next door to us. That is really not true. My data doesn't support that, okay? And I've researched this question over and over again, okay? So the 3X uncapped design, which is one of the most prevalent designs for B2B selling, is really a representation of the labor market. And what it says is, if I have 100K, 100,000 as my target pay on target earnings, and the base is 70 and the at-risk component is 30, and I'm going to revisit these numbers again, that the upside opportunity is 3 times the at-risk component. That means I take the 30 times 3, 90, add it to the 70. So the best performers should be able to earn about 160. Now, I will revisit these concepts in a few minutes as I just presented them to you. But this is sort of the family of variable cash compensation programs that are available. And yes, and in some cases, some people don't believe their salespeople should be on incentives, and they put them on a no-risk gain-sharing plan or an add-on plan. So we're not being judgmental at this point. So philosophy does count, and sometimes they'll make a decision that says, no, I don't want individual reward programs, because our business isn't constructed that way. It's a team effort, and the engineers are super important, and the salespeople are just part of the equation. Okay, so with that, let's go on to one more presentation to make sure we separate our producers from our sales representatives. So the income producers, they get a target rate. The seller owns the relationship. They get a percent of revenue. It's unlimited. Usually it's some type of flat commission rate. Real estate traders, like municipal bond traders or energy traders. And then we have our sales representatives, who we're going to be talking about today. They have a target pay. We go to the labor market, we find out what the job is worth, we split that into 2 components, a base and a target incentive amount, and then we provide an upside opportunity, okay? And we're managing their pay. Even though the pay plan says it's uncapped, we mathematically manage it so that they're earning the 3X upside opportunity. Now, that 3X number, which I'm going to repeat this later on, is really a representation of the labor market, the 90th percentile of the labor market. It's a shorthand way of getting there. However, if your survey data does not show the 3x to be what the top earners. You may have to either increase the 3x to 3.5x, or maybe if you want, decrease the 3x, like maybe to a 2.5, the at-risk component. So if you have good labor market data to find the 90th percentile, that 3x is trying to replicate, and it's pretty dead on. But if you have survey data that contradicts it and says, our industry or where we who we work with, the most is 2x, then that becomes your design your design principle. Okay, all right. So let's take a look at the things that we're going to examine. We're going to examine sales compensation principles, universal principles that apply on a worldwide basis across all industries, across all sizes of organizations. Now, I'm going to set aside a thing known as prevalence of practice. Now, what is prevalence of practice? It's a methodology in which you go benchmark yourself against other people. You gather all the data in your particular industry, and you look at it, and you go, okay, whatever the middle is, that's what we're going to follow. Okay, that is absolutely not the way to design sales compensation programs. Yes, you go to get survey data and target market data, but you do not use their designs. Their designs are unique to their jobs. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because having collected a lot of that data, design data, in fact, we have a database by industry of thousands of incentive programs and hundreds of companies. The width of the data is so wide that it makes the middle meaningless. So prevalence of practice, find out what others are doing, is really not a fruitful exercise. It's educational, and it's kind of, entertaining and maybe helpful in one slide in a presentation. That is not how you design sales compensation programs. You start with a set of principles and your job, and you put your job through those principles, and that then produces for you the compensation program. So in the boxed area, which I'm going to be covering, you can see we're going to talk about eligibility and pay levels and pay mix and leverage. These are all your building codes available for sales compensation. And of course, if we had had more time, I would have chatted about the other boxes, but we're just going to focus on the fundamental design codes that are used for building sales compensation programs. Okay. So the very first one we're going to talk about, and you can see it highlighted up here, is eligibility, okay? So you need to have a policy, and I'm going to focus on the left side of this chart right now. You need to have a policy said the following types of jobs are eligible wherever you are in the world for sales compensation participation. And generally, most companies only have their employees participate in one program. So if you're in the sales compensation program, you're not in the company bonus program. Usually those two things are kept separate. Okay. So as we take a look at this, we have eligibility, okay? And the eligibility criteria would be significant customer and or partner contact or relationship. So we're working with somebody who's going to get us money. Persuasion. So that's what we're looking for. They have a persuasion role. And in fact, sales compensation is really designed to reward successful persuasion. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the persuasion that's inherent in each jobs. Now, even though this may be painful to admit, some sales jobs have lost their persuasion role, and they're now acting as service people to their customers. Fulfillment selling might be an example of that. And the question is, do they really need to be on sales incentives because there's no more persuasion left in the job? So what you're looking for is you're looking for the degree of persuasion, and you're looking for, so why would, for example, a customer service person have an incentive program? Well, if they're persuading the customer to re-sign the service contract, or they're upselling the customer, that makes it eligible, doesn't make it mandatory, makes it eligible for incentive compensation. So the word you want to remember from this page is persuasion, okay? High levels, process involvement, clear and quantifiable sales objectives. Now, the complex chart to the right was one company's attempt to take hundreds and hundreds of jobs and get them into a bucket so that they could design their programs. It's like a decision tree. I'll just walk through the top line. This job, always start with this job. This job has external contact. I'm reading along the top of the branches here. They initiate, so they reach out to people, customers, and they persuade a prospect or a buyer. So that would be classic direct sales jobs. And that's eligible for our 3X uncapped design. So that eligibility column is the plans that are available. And you can read down there. As we go down, you can see the degree of persuasion increases, so that we're at the very bottom, we have internal support people. No, they're not eligible for sales compensation. Yeah, if you want to do an add-on group plan, you can. Now, this was designed for a client. You can actually design this for yourself too. If you have hundreds of jobs that you have to pass through, create a decision tree that allows you to pass the eligibility question for each job to determine what type of pay program is going to participate in. Okay. All right. So that was building code number 1, eligibility. Jobs that have persuasion are eligible for sales compensation consideration. I didn't say they have to be in sales comp. And remember, the thing that I said before, if your philosophy precludes individual incentives, we understand. If your industry or your regulatory environment precludes you from individual incentives, that also will, usurp this discussion. All right. So number 1, eligibility. Okay. So that was, okay. Got it, Dave. Fine. All right. What's the next one? All right. Before I go on to pay levels, I do want to get this vocabulary right about what group of people are we talking about. So there are things known as, and you should adopt this vocabulary so that when somebody says to you, I want to put people on a team incentive, the question is, well, what type of team is it? So having these 3 words actually help you identify the difference between individual, team, and groups. So individuals are obviously individual contributors. They're unique unto themselves. They're responsible for their sales, their activities. They're measured at the individual level. A team, this is super important, is a collaborative group of people. They actually have to work together to get the deal done. Let's just say successfully sell the product, okay? And so one cannot move forward without the other. Now, that is not the same thing as proximity. So if I take a city like London and I have the London sales team and they work individually in their particular postal area or whatever is assigned to them, their list of accounts, that still does not mean put them on a team incentive in London. They're still individual contributors. In fact, they're a group of people. And if you want to do something separate with an add-on in terms of the London team's outstanding performance, and we have this additional add-on. So proximity is not the definition of a team. A team is collaboration. So when you're considering incentive designs, we want to be very careful before we start saying, well, you're part of the London team. Well, they don't work. They work on their own activities. They don't. Well, I want them to be nice to each other. That's great. Have an event, take them out to dinner, have group meetings, but do not tie their pay together artificially, because remember, and the reason I say this, and I feel strongly about this, remember what sales incentives is. It's at-risk pay. You actually took the money from their OTE. So the deal is, I'm taking money from your OTE, which should have been 100K, and I'm making it available so that you are kind of, you're betting on yourself that you'll be able to do better than the amount of money I took from you and therefore earn more. So the measures and the way that we measure them should be in an ethical way tied to what they can accomplish. So you don't give them a measure they can't influence. Remember, you've taken their money. Okay. I mean, you might say, no, wait a minute, Dave, I don't think of it that way. No, really, you should think of it that way. Okay. And that will clean up a lot of these discussions. Well, I think we should put them on a team, or I think we should put them on some type of galactic measure. And so no, we have to give them measures that they can influence. Okay. All right. So number 2, pay levels. Now, this clearly is a philosophical question that you need your leadership team to agree. Now, if you're in HR and total rewards, you probably already have this number, but it's super important for the sales organization to know the tilt of the line of competitiveness. It's not just the middle number that's important here. We need to know how low we are compared to the low end of the market and how high we are compared to the high end of the market. So if I take a look at this, I actually have some what call pay lines, okay? And you can see low performers, medium performers, high performers. And again, you're writing this principle for the company. At our company, XYZ company, we are a premium model. That means that we're just going to pay above the market. Even our low performers, our middle performers, and our high performers. Before you wince at that and say, "What? Why would you do that?" Well, if you think about it, sometimes the asset of the person is so valuable to you, their institutional knowledge, their knowledge of the customer, and maybe they're not having a good year. Losing them would be catastrophic. Okay, so they're so valuable to us that I just want to take the issue of pay off the table. I'm just going to pay them a lot of money. Even our low performers, medium performers, and high performers are going to pay above the market. That is a philosophical decision that you would make. Okay, but take a look at some of the other sell or die, which this means I have a very aggressive down and a very aggressive upside earning opportunity. The market tracker is the most common that says, I want our low performers basically making what their low performers make, and I want our medium performers making what their medium performers are making, and our high performers. And remember, your survey data has to be incumbent-based data. So it's just not averages of averages. You need to know the 10th, 25th, 50th, 75th, and 90th percentile so that you can set this pay line. And that pay line is going to be very important when you're actually building your formula mechanics. And remember, we're not shopping some other company. What formula do you use? You're building them a job at a time. So that's what sales compensation is all about. You will design, the job will be designed, you'll select the measures, and then you'll back your way into the formulas, and it will align with your pay level philosophy. So I'm telling you, the middle market, the center practice is market tracker. But like, well, why would somebody do an economy model? Well, let me give you an example. You might have a call center, and it's not for everybody. And maybe it's an entry level job, and if you get 6 months out of them or a year, and they're happy and you're happy, it's a starter job. It's okay. You're here for the training, and once you get a good experience, you can move on. Some people make that decision. It's not a matter of being cheap. It's just it's a decision in terms of the level of investment that you're going to make. Okay, so I don't want to take any of these off the table, and I don't want to deride any of them. There's sometimes a rationale for each of these practices. Nice place to work is, hey, we're all about being one good team, and so this whole idea about individual incentives and maybe aggressive pay practices, just not us as an organization. And you might end up having, paying the low performers higher than what the market is paying, and not paying your best performers what the market is paying their people. Okay. Now, let's talk about target compensation or on target earnings. Okay, so there's a lot of components associated with compensating salespeople. We have their sales expenses. Most people will pay for that. We provide them the company benefits. Most companies do that. And then we have this target incentive amount, and then we have this over target incentive amount. So the subjects that I'm going to be covering is the salary, target incentive, over and target, but I am going to mention about contests and spiffs. Contests and spiffs and recognition programs are considered an add-on. They're not part of the OTE, okay? And you can see it becomes very important for us to find out what the price point is of those jobs. And so certainly we're getting survey data and purchasing it, and it very much paying close attention to what your industry competitors are doing from a pay point of view, not a design point of view, but from a pay point of view. And the pushback you might say is, don't my designs have to look like what others do? No. Your designs need to look like what you want your salespeople to do, okay? Well, will that make us uncompetitive? It's a business decision your business units have made about how to go to market. You need to support that business unit. And so we have a belief system. It's all about group effort, and it's not about being an individual contributor and, being a star and making a lot of money. That is the philosophy your company wants to follow, and your pay system will reflect that, and so will your target pay levels. Okay. All right. So just some interesting observations in the marketplace. So if I get back far enough and I look at survey data, what I find, and by the way, W-2 means annual earnings. Okay. If I take a look at this box here, it says that the labor market generally provides higher pay levels based upon the amount of volume that a salesperson is handling. Okay, and you can see that this line continues up, but it tends to flatten out. So the labor market says, well, after a certain point, even more volume is not going to produce for you. additional pay. Okay, and that's really what a sales representative model looks like. Now, the size of those boxes is similar in this sort of perception that the variability is usually greater. This chart's assuming that the territory rep has greater influence, greater persuasion. So this is a territory rep with a high persuasion job. Okay, and so you can see we have different levels of variability in the pay mix as we move up the food chain in terms of total earnings. Okay, and I just one last comment about a producer. If you were looking at this chart, what would a producer program look like? It would be a straight line starting where the low is, that little orange, and going straight up to the right. There would no producers just keep earning more and more money. And so you might say, well, why are they paid differently? Because they own the business and theoretically they can walk it. And also they tend to be producers tend to be expand. A headcount expands dramatically when there's a lot of velocity in their sector, monetary velocity, and their headcount tends to shrink, but their commission rates tend to stay the same. So remember, with these charts I'm referring to are sales representative charts, not producer charts. And as a result of that, and meanwhile, for those of you who communicate with finance and everything, this conversation that we're having, the thing about producer plans, they're fully variable to the company. Sales representative plans are not, cost-wise, are not variable to the company. So at the end of the year, the average pay of that job will be $100,000, and you need to manage the quotas to make that happen. So it will be variable to the person, but not to the company. So in sales representative model, the target compensation amount summed up is the budget. Okay, we don't do a fix, okay, because there's a little bit of wobble in there. But we're not going to be saying, the sales compensation program is a variable cost program. It is not. It is for producers, but it is not for sales representatives. And frequently, finance would like to say, explain that again to me slowly. Okay, all right. And again, when you go into the labor market, the point of this chart is look at the variances at the extremes. That's why it's so important for us to take a look at the 10th percentile and the 90th percentile. So in this particular chart that I take to the director of sales or the vice president of sales and say, in the middle of the market, our average earners are pretty much tracking with what the labor market is saying. However, your top performers in the sales department, you're underpaying them because the labor market, the survey data, is actually paying a lot more for the 90th percentile. Well, I will tell you, you will be given, Hawaiian leis. You'll be saluted. The champagne will be popped. Thank you, HR, for recognizing that the most important people that I have are being underpaid compared to the market. So the point being is sales compensation requires percentile data, 10th, 25th, 50th, 75th, and 90th data. And that line that you decided philosophically, you've got to plot it against that survey data. And you have to do it a job at a time, okay? All right, so we're still in principles. So what's the principle here that we're talking about? Target pay. Get survey data, make sure it matches your philosophy line, okay? So again, you're gonna harvest, on the left-hand side, you're harvesting all sorts of survey data. And those of you who've done that know it comes back, sometimes it's just a jumble. And you need to kind of pick the company's pay line for, on the right-hand side, the account manager 1, 2, and 3, and what we're willing to pay from a midpoint to an upside. This is, of course, on the target compensation, and then you'd want a similar chart for the base salary management, okay? Okay, so, all right, let's pause a second. Okay, what's this presentation about? I'm giving you building codes, principles, and what I'm giving you is what's called center practice. When companies have been writing these principles and establishing them for themselves, what you're hearing is the most typical practice that people follow. Do you have to follow it? No, you don't. You can bend it like you want, and you can make modifications to this. So no sales compensation police person will come and punish you. And particularly, your philosophy can trump any of these principles that I'm sharing with you. You say, we're a collective whole. We don't recognize individual performance. Bingo, this whole stuff goes right out the door, okay? So two principles we've already covered. First one was eligibility. The second was pay levels. Then next is pay mix, the degree of pay at risk. And so again, the degree of persuasion is the variable that's affecting the pay mix. Now, this question about, well, isn't this really dependent upon the industry? It's dependent upon the job. Some jobs in some industries have low persuasion, and consequently, their pay mixes look alike. It's not that it's a competitive practice, it's because of the nature of the job. And in other industries, certain jobs have very high degrees of persuasion, and so the pay mix is more aggressive. And so that means that the portion of pay in base versus incentive. Oh, well, don't you think, David, that, America and England has aggressive pay mixes and that's kind of their philosophy? So I have actually surveyed this question 3 times over the last 20 years. The swing in pay mix, and remember, I'm including China, Japan, Europe, North America, Middle East. The swing in pay mix for the account manager job is less than 5% amongst all those countries. So this sort of cultural imperative statement thing is, the data has not supported it. Okay, now you may have a different point of view from me. I accept that, but no, the data has not supported it. It really is the nature of the job. So pay mix is really giving us, we have a job with high persuasion and we have a job with low persuasion. And so from a design point of view, I generally put some bookends on this. It's just really not necessary to go deeper than 50-50. You got somebody's attention with a 50-50 pay mix. And at 90-10, that's awful shallow. Is it really worth it? So I generally, when I design incentive programs, I generally stick between 60-40 for the high persuasion jobs, maybe 65-35 and 85-15. Okay, but you've just published this and you've said the pay mix, our pay mixes are set based upon how much influence that person has on the customer to act. And the jobs with the higher influence and the higher persuasion get the deeper pay mix. Okay. All right, this little chart, which I won't go into detail. So it's not an exact science. I will sit sometimes in a meeting and I'll say, so let's talk about this job, the account manager. So how much, and I go down through these things. So is it mostly service or marketing, or is it mostly sales? And the checkbox is down here. The checkbox is down here. And by the way, 70-30, I use that as a middle number. So the checks are mostly on the left-hand side. Then I go, it's less aggressive than 70-30. If the check marks are more on the right-hand side of the page, and remember, they zigzag all down the chart here. Revenue influence, low. Revenue influence, high. Well, I'm going to check on the right-hand side. That's a very high revenue influence. So I use this when there's confusion about the leadership team, what should the pay mix be? I just sit down with a group of leaders and say, well, let's go through some of these variables. How would you check it off? Sum them up, and you'll get pretty close. Okay, so are you telling me, though, that it's really a science? No, it is not a science. So if a company says, well, we'd like to do 70-30, and I think it should be 65-35, and they say, well, we would prefer 70-30. I go, okay, it's close. That's pretty close. Okay, 65-35, 75. But I would like to make sure, though, that whatever decision was made is made globally on the same basis. Okay. So you can see some pay mix examples. We go from 60-40 to 80-20. You can see the jobs, and I'll read: direct sales, overlay sales, sales and service jobs, lead generation. These are our marketing people. You can see how the pay mixes will change by job. Okay, now I'm starting to get this picture again. You told me that every job has its own plan. Yes, it does. And it has its own pay mix. Well, that's going to make it hard to administer. It's going to be confusing. It will be confusing to you, the administrator. It will not be confusing to the incumbent. Remember, the test for complexity is not how many plans you have. The test of complexity is how confusing it is to the person. And there's some things you could do that could make it very confusing to the person. So if account manager has a 70-30 mix and a sales and service rep has a 90-10 mix, the person sees their own pay mix or understands their own pay program. You just have to keep track of the differences between those two different jobs. Okay. Leverage and upside. Okay, this was the math I shared with you before. The most common is known as the 3X uncapped design. You can see our words here. The mix is 70-30. Let's go to the middle column. You keep saying 3 times. What was the 3-time thing again? Okay, 3 times the 30. You can see it right there. So 30, 30, and 30, that's 90, added to the 70 means the best performers should be earning 160. Where did I get that number from? The 90th percentile of the labor market. I would recommend, even though the labor market wobbles a little bit, I would recommend that you adopt a single leverage design on a global basis. Now, remember what you're doing. If you pick not 3x, but 2.5x, you may be under, for your best performers, may be under the labor market. So, or if you do 3.5x, you may be, in fact, your best performers might be paid above everybody else's best performers. But that piece of math is the underlying calculation for setting the pay mix and the upside opportunity. And that is known as the leverage. So the company needs to have, and it should be, on all jobs, the same type of leverage design should be used so that, you know, the principle of calculating the earnouts are the same. Now, some people would say, well, why is this important? Because you're going to use these numbers to set your slope calculations to create the formulas. Oh, David, we don't do it that way. We sit at a spreadsheet and we try different commission rates. Try 3%. Oh, no, that's too much. Well, try 2.5%. No, you do not build formulas by sitting at an Excel sheet, plugging in different numbers to see what the payout's going to be. You back into it as a slope calculation. Do you hear me? I'm very teacher parental tone. Sorry. Okay. This is the 2X cap design. And I will tell you, it's kind of interesting. There's a job like in the consumer packaged goods. They generally do a 2X cap because the degree of influence and the amount of ability to recognize and track their revenue is compromised because it's going through that channel. So it's not uncommon to see a 2X cap design, for example, in consumer packaged goods. But this is, again, remember, this is the classic design for a management incentive program, okay? All right, measures, okay, a couple of important here. Again, you're writing your principles. You can just take each of these pages and write your principles. Couple things about measures, okay? No more than 3 measures. Why? Because it's like listening to 3 radio stations. You're over communicating. Well, we have these measures that, you know, it's really important to us, like net promoter score. Okay, remember, we only want measures they can influence because remember the ethics of it? We took their money, okay? So we gotta be, it's gotta be aligned with the job. They have to be able to influence it. You gotta be able to give it a quota. You gotta be able to measure it. Here's a couple things. Don't do the following. No more than 3 measures, okay? No corporate galactic measures, okay? That's an add-on program. If you want to stick an add-on program for some type of corporate measures, knock yourself out. Activity measures, I'm not a fan of those, but occasionally you have to use them. In other words, how many calls did you make today? Wishful thinking measures worth less than 15%. What's the point? Okay. Compliance measures. I don't mean legal compliance. I mean administrative compliance. Well, in our incentive program, they can't get paid out unless Salesforce.com is up to date. Wrong use of money. Do not use money for compliance purposes, okay? Use money for aspirational activities like getting new customers, okay? That's what supervision is for, is to tell people, please complete Salesforce.com and make your entries. We don't use our pay program and our very valuable incentive dollars for compliance purposes, okay? So these are different types of measures that are available. I like the ones at the top, production measures and sales effectiveness measures. Do I like the measures going down? Less so. Customer impact, you know, sales satisfaction, loyalty, resource management. I do like those for managers, how effective they're managing their resources. But once you get into activities and subjective measures, it becomes pretty questionable. I'm going to talk about MBOs in a minute, okay? Well, why don't you like activity measures? Well, I've designed plans with activity measures in them. They're usually for instructional purposes. The sales associate job, which is a job that lasts 6 months, has a series of things that we want you to accomplish. Now, it's important that you do some selling, but we want you to attend these classes. We want you to make 5 calls a day. We want you to shadow a senior salesperson. So your incentive program is tied to those activities going forward. Now, some folks say, well, no, we have a sales process. We want people to absolutely follow the sales process. Well, you're going into a different type of management system. That management system is a control management system. And I'm not going to object to it, but you're saying we have a very regimented way of what we want people to do. And it's really measuring activities. Like in our call center, they have to take a call in so many minutes. It can't last longer than this. They have to be able to mention that. And those are, well, where's the results? No, we don't measure on results. We measure on those call center activities. Okay, I get it. So you have an input system that you're measuring on. Yes, okay, and we know that if they do the inputs correctly, the output. So that is a directed sales process model, and in that context, you might use incentives. You might not even use incentives at all. You just say, you need to execute against these specific tasks. Okay, but let me tell you something. Blending those two together, I have result measures and I have activity measures. It gets confusing, okay, and messy. All right. Now, I'm not going to do the full vignette here, but we go through an exercise of having a leadership team make the decision about the performance measures. Here's the most common scenario. Everybody has a whole bunch of measures they want to put in. And you're saying, no, wait a minute, we have a rule, no more than 3 measures. So go ahead and check. In the meeting is the VP of sales, VP of marketing, the CFO, and the regional manager that we flew in, and say, okay, rank them 1 through 3. Okay, and this is what we get. Well, if I'm the general manager, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Before we start talking about compensation, we need to talk about what we're measuring the account manager on. This is not a good outcome. Finance is saying profit, price realization, and account churn. And the VP of sales, I'm describing a discussion that you're going to have. You don't need to use this chart, but it's very revealing, particularly that there's a high difference of opinion. So right away, we got to stop talking about compensation, and we got to start talking about this job and what we're expecting from that job. Comp people are imposing no more than 3 measures, but clearly this group is going to say, whoa, we are not on the, ladies and gentlemen, we are not on the same page here, what we want this account manager job doing. So the worst thing to do is try to glue all this together. And that's when you get confusing compensation programs. The VP of sales wants this, the director of marketing wants that, the finance person wants that. And then we kind of take glue and paper clips and other chunks of things and try to create a compensation program that has Roman numerals because you got so many components. Shame on you. And it go like, well, we had to accommodate all no, you don't. Okay. We got to get these people in a room and say, hold on. We got to be clear what we're saying to our named account managers. We got to have clarity, and that clarity has to be evident in that job. So, and the other thing will pop up is that, wow, we got some job confusion here also. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to have that same group take the measures that were selected for each job and weight those measures. Okay. So revenue represents 50%. In this job, it represents 70% in that job. So all of this is done before any formulas show up. So what is this discussion about? So principles, I'm back to the principle. I'm going to go back a second. I'm back to principles, measures, and their weights. So we want to do this independent of looking at any types of PowerPoints with formulas and dancing coins going up ladders and things like that. Okay. We want to have a leadership discussion about at each of these jobs, what are the performance measures and what are their weights? And I have some rules for you. No more than 3, no compliance measures, no activity measures, no wishful thinking measures. And we're going to get our leadership team together to make those decisions. And then we're going to weight those measures. Okay. So the concept here is that we got to have a set of principles about measures. Now, this is the actual fulcrum point of effective sales compensation design, is the selection of the measures and making sure there's agreement in the weighting of the measures. After this, formulas become relatively easy. Okay. So I'm just going to make a quick note about KSOs or MBOs. I'm not a fan of them. Okay. Why aren't you, David? Well, I am a fan of them if it's for like a unique job that has a unique set of customers, like global account managers. Yeah, I think that's a good use of them. But having paperwork being churned every quarter by territory reps and account managers about their key objectives, it becomes an administrative quagmire. Okay. It can be manipulated. It loses its currency. I like MBO programs if you want to use them for a management device, but as soon as you put money up against them, then they start to spin out of control and they become sometimes an angry event. Okay. But if you do use them, I have some rules for you. So this is a company policy. Regardless of what David likes or doesn't like, I have a company policy, you do, about using KSOs. If we use them, there are 3 types of KSOs. I'm in the middle of part of the chart here, so let me pull that up. I have sales results, sales progression measures, and sales activity measures. Sales results is, yeah, I have a very individual result available for this particular account that I want to see accomplished. It's in your MBOs, and man, there's going to be, you know, additional earnings if you achieve that sales result. Or sales progression. This is like pipeline speed, velocity, number of accounts entering in, and how often and what the close rate is. And then sales activities, where how many calls did you make a day? So you would publish a page that would look like this, that says, yes, you can use KSOs and MBOs. However, okay, you can use sales results, but no more than 50, you can't use more than 50% of the target incentive on the KSO. Would you ever bend that rule? Oh, gosh, maybe for the global account manager as an exception. I don't know. Sales progression, it could be up to 25%. So this column on the right-hand side is your policy. Now, I'm giving you an example of a policy, but you can change the right-hand column, okay? So you're saying, yeah, we got, yeah, you can do KSOs or MBOs, but there are 3 types: sales results, sales progression, and sales activities. And here's how much money is available of the target incentive for those types of measures. And the stakeholders in Latin America that are designing their own plans are now following the corporate criteria on the use of MBOs. Okay. And then, of course, we have pay mechanics and pay curve. And you can see there's a, and I mean, for those of you who are new to the subject, you're looking at slopes. These are slopes. These are the angles of the payout rates based upon a threshold. Okay, if we have a threshold, don't pay for persuasion twice. Remember that expression, persuasion. We have a target incentive earning and a target performance level, and then we have an excellence incentive payout. And as you know, this is a 3X design. You see the 300% there on the left. I mean, in the middle of the page, and that's being paid out at 125% of performance. The 125% of performance is the 90th percentile of performer. So what is it? Turn that into a sentence. Well, you know, the best people in our company can do about 125% of quota. 90th percentile. Okay. All right. So you're going to use this, and this is sort of a vocabulary page that I'm just sharing with you. These are the different words that you would use to talk about that formula and that slope calculation. It kind of in my head, whenever I'm designing incentive programs, I know I got to make sure all these things are decided. I need to know on the far left-hand side if it's a producer. This is not a principle. It's just sort of, you know, when you click on a website, it says show website map. This is sort of all these decisions will eventually have, in each of these columns will eventually have to be made. It's sort of like a checklist just to remind yourself of the things that you're covering. A couple of words on here that might be new. I think ICR stands for individual commission rate. KSO, key sales objective. Okay. And then I'm sharing with you some of the common designs and formulas, but remember, formulas are relatively easy. What's the hard part? Job clarity and performance measures. That's what the tough issues are when they're actually designing. You are creating a set of plan mechanics they can shop. So this is a classic example. So how many are there? There's about 40 different formula mechanics that you can pick from. You know, these are the most popular ones, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at the other 35 or 30 of them. And so, you know, and knowing those in the back of your pocket, you can pull out different ones. I would draw your attention to the bottom 3: hurdles, multipliers, and matrices. These are the power designs in sales compensation. And that's when you're mathematically linking 2 measures together. A hurdle is you can't get the accelerator unless you hit quota on the second measure. Or the multiplier, the better you are on price realization, no low discounting, the higher your payout rate will be. And the lower you are on price realization, discounting, you know, you're not doing well, the lower your payout's going to be. That's called a multiplier. And then the matrix design is when a salesperson has to reconcile 2 dissimilar objectives, and they got to grow and they got to be profitable at the same time, and they have pricing flexibility. So in a matrix design, the better that you do on both of those measures, the higher the payout. So as you get into the world of sales compensation design and you look at your own plans, you should also have sort of in your back pocket these different types of formula mechanics. So what's the point about the principles? Well, we might publish, here are the more common designs at our company that you can consider based upon your job content. So there's the the commission program, the ICR program, the bonus formula program. It's where you're equalizing earning opportunities. The territories are different size. Or we also have these link designs available to you, hurdles, multipliers, and matrices. Okay. All right. Performance and payout periods. Now, this is, we can have a couple of things: discrete periods, progression on an annual plan, and cumulative performance year to date. We had a question yesterday on order linearity, and that is the hockey stick at the end of each quarter. Well, one of the ways to solve that is to have a cumulative year to date measurement. So I'm paying you the first quarter, it's paid out. I measure you from Q1 and Q2. I calculated incentive for 2 quarters. I subtract out Q1. That's called cumulative year to date. And it precludes you from moving orders around from one period to another. So discrete, well, when would you use a discrete measurement period? Okay, every month, whatever you produce, that's what you're going to be paid on. You don't have to worry about an annual number. Well, for example, maybe in retail, you might do it that way, okay? But you got to have a policy that says, when do we use discrete? Progression on an annual plan goes something like this: not until you hit your annual quota will the accelerator kick in. Okay, so that's called progression on an annual plan. But in the cumulative performance to date, there might be a series of ramps that occur every quarter, and they can accelerate up, but we cannot have them accelerate in one quarter and then sandbag in the next quarter, because what will happen at the end of the year, the company will pay out 105% incentives, but the revenue will be 95% because the sales reps oscillated and kicked up the deals. One quarter they blew it out, and the next quarter they kind of sat on orders. That's why you use cumulative year to date. Okay, so this is basically what I've just described. And remember, you're thinking about a policy document. You've got to write this up that says, we use the following designs, particularly with your stakeholders on a worldwide basis. If you're just responsible for sales comp design and you don't have all these stakeholders, you need to document it for your own benefit, so that whenever you're communicating or speaking with your leadership team, whether that's in sales or finance or HR, you're saying, well, the design reflects our underlying set of principles that we have here at the company that we use to design sales compensation programs. Okay. Payout frequency, how frequently you should pay, it's a cash flow decision. You can't have people not paying their bills. So if you have an aggressive pay mix because you think they're a high persuasion individual contributor, you've got to get them money pretty frequently. They have bills to pay. They have their rent for their flat. They have their mobile phone. They have their car payments. And so we want to make sure that we're getting them enough cash. And if you have a really aggressive plan and it only pays quarterly, you might have to do like a monthly minimum payment so that they can be covering their expenses. A couple of other principles here. The long sales cycle, you're not going to be paying very frequently. And if the measure weight is pretty high, probably need to pay more frequently. Okay. Now, quota distribution. This is another one that just gets, whoa, what are you talking about here? That is what it is. No, it is not is what it is. You need to have a policy statement. So, all right, let me put this into a sentence, okay? At our company, this is you writing, okay? The quota performance that we seek for each job, okay? So the account manager job. By the way, those of you who have 5 sales reps, you're going, this is not going to work. We don't have enough data points, but the principle is still the same. So we're expecting 55 to 65% of the people to reach and exceed quota, and 35 to 45% of the people not to reach quota. That is the standard practice most sales organizations expect, okay? And all of the principles that I just shared with you, like the 3X uncapped, those types of things, rest upon this type of distribution, okay? Now remember, this is at the end of the year. You're actually saying, well, what would actually happen? And you're kind of looking for this. Now, in real life, this is what companies publish. In real life, the actual quota distribution is closer to about 51 to 52% of the salespeople actually receive quota. Now, I'm going to go back to this math discussion about, what do you mean sales compensation is not a variable cost? Because the low performers are paying the high performers. That's what that's how the model works. Remember, you harvested all their pay, the at-risk component, and you're redistributing it. So consequently, the monies need to be distributed out so that the low performers are making less than what they kind of put on the table, their target incentive, and the high performers are making more. That's why it's not a variable cost program, but your quotas need to be very sharp and very accurate. And if you're bad at setting quotas, you can end up with accidental overpayment or accidental underpayment. For example, I'm expecting that there will be excessive overpayments in 2021. Why? Because the economy is picking up faster, at least in the Americas, than the quotas that were set at the beginning of the year. So I do a survey at the end of the year, and I ask, well, what was the quota performance and payout experience? And I'm expecting this year to be what I would call a rich year for sales representatives, because the speed at which our economy, particularly in North America, is picking up is a lot faster than what people thought. Okay, so that brings up the question. So you publish this and say the quotas should have this type of outcome. Well, nobody likes quotas. That's okay. All right, that's part of the job. Okay, and of course, we don't want to have a whole bunch of people below quota. If something's happening like that on the left-hand side, something's wrong. Either the quota system is broken or the job is misdesigned. Nor do we want the thing on the right-hand side where everybody's over quota. Now, let me contradict myself. I'm sorry, David. We run a happy place here, and we want people to be happy, and we would like to make sure everybody is exceeding quota. And so the quotas aren't that hard. Okay, you cannot offer then the 3x uncapped. You will blow your budget. So in other words, we're going to be back at a 2x or maybe even a 1.75x, because if everybody's on the right-hand side, we don't have that money. We just took the OTE budget and blew it up. And so I have to go back and retool my principles if I'm going to accept the far thing on the far right. Let me just also mention the thing on the far left. That is where we have a relatively group of people that are making money. I'm going to give a quote to you. It goes something like this. Why do people terminate at your company? Why do they leave? Just think of an answer. You might go, the pay program, their manager. Okay, the reason people terminate is because of loss of hope. Okay, loss of hope that they'll get along with their manager. Loss of hope that they'll reach quota. So whenever you build loss of hope that they'll be promoted. Anytime that you build a management system that has loss of hope built into it, that's why you'll get turnover. Yes, some people will be attracted away, or they may have pursue a sterling interest that they had that your company doesn't provide. Yeah, I get that too. But most turnover, voluntary turnover, is loss of hope turnover. Okay. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of this, but you need to have a range of performance. Each job is unique, so therefore the upside opportunity and the slope calculations will be unique by job, by performance measure. Okay. Again, the range of performance, minimum to maximum, will get more narrow. The law of averages as you go up the food chain, the business unit, the spread between what's low performance and high performance gets more narrow. Okay. And then quotas. And what I want to say about quotas is, let me see what the second chart is here. Yeah. So quotas is this discussion that says, hey, listen, we got to have a way of distributing the quotas. And there's a variety of techniques. And I pull you over onto the right-hand side. So if it's a major account, we're going to have a sales rep really involved in helping us set the quota for next year. If we have this big, broad territory with a zillion accounts and, where people are just calling, we're going to use statistical modeling to set their quotas. Okay. Crediting. Vertical crediting is okay. The boss get crediting for the sales rep's behavior. The thing you want to look for is horizontal crediting, and we do not want to make excessive horizontal crediting. We're looking for people who contributed to the persuasion that will get credit for the sale. And I would say what's called double crediting. If you're anywhere over 108% to 112%, that's typically what the double crediting is. National account, local salesperson, pre-sales support, sales rep, they both get credit. So if you're into 140%, your compensable revenue is 140% of your actual revenue, you're doing too much double crediting. Okay. I'm going to pass that one. Crediting events, last commentaries on recognitions and contests. I'm going to get to see if there's any questions too. Recognitions and contests are add-on programs, And these are valuable for doing things new for the first time. You need a governance process. No, marketing can't launch their own contest whenever they want to. We need to coordinate that through sales operations. We don't want to compete with the annual sales incentive program. And remember, this is a policy statement that you're writing. They're not to exceed 5% of the population's OTE, total target earnings. Okay, no more than 5 year, no last no longer than 3 months or 1 month. You set a time limit on it. Okay. And generally, what we want to do is make sure that a fair percentage of people can actually participate. These are ideal for launching new products, doing something new for the first time. They shouldn't be predictable. They shouldn't occur on regularly on the same annual basis. Okay. And that's it. Okay, so I answered the question, what are building codes? How does this concept apply to sales comp? So you have a set of building codes. Now, I went through those very fast. I know that, and you're going like, oh my gosh, was I supposed to learn all this now? No. You were supposed to come away with this by saying, oh, I need to get smart about this so that I can set up a set of design principles that we can use at our company. And you can write those principles in those buckets that I just gave you. It's pretty simple, okay? So with that, what way you say, well, wait a minute, I need to learn more about this. Okay, so let me give you some additional learning resources. Okay, there's a couple of, I'm going to talk to you about how you can get more educated in this particular subject. So we have books. You can do Sales Compensation Made Simple, Joe DeMisa. That's a very simple book. World at Work is the compensation association that has a lot of courses in compensation practices. And they also publish a book. This was a pretty good book Joe DeMisa wrote. It's about 80 pages. My book, Compensating the Salesforce, everything I just told you is in the book. Okay, so that's sort of the mothership on sales compensation, compensating the Salesforce. Oh, if you want a copy of this, I would recommend you get a phone out, take a picture of this page, because you might want to refer back to some of these resources later. So I know you're grabbing for your phone right now. Well, go ahead, okay? Just get it out and take a picture of this slide, okay? So those are the books I would recommend. Education classes. World at Work has a class that I developed, and it's a monster class. It's 18 modules, 55 videos, 13 hours. And it's not like I just did now. It's not really super rushed, okay? And then the Global Sales Operations Association. If you're involved in doing a plan design for next year and you need to know how to build formulas, that's a nice 6-hour course. Again, I'm the author of that class. Published content. If you want to learn more about this subject, the Alexander Group has a sales compensation resource center. You can go to our website, go to our work, sales compensation, sales comp research, article, research documents, survey results, videos, and you can just kind of wander around in there and see what you might be interested in. We're adding our vertical content, so pretty soon, if you're interested in SaaS or high tech, there'll be a button for that. I'm also conducting, I just launched it yesterday. If you're interested in participating, send me an email. I do a survey every year. So when I say something, I've been surveying it. I do 2 surveys a year. I just launched my hot topic survey. And that survey is asking questions about what happened with your COVID pay practices, deep dive into sales crediting, base pay management, particularly geographic differentials, contests and spiffs. So if you're interested in participating in that, please go to David Cichelli, send us an email and we'll send you an invitation. And then, hey, if you want to LinkedIn with me, send me an invitation. I'll be gladly accept your invitation. Okay. Wow. Okay, so let me just take a few minutes here and go to some questions. And I'm going to go back over to the comment page. And I'm going to actually go to Holly Allen's question yesterday. And she's asked, linearity seems to be a recurring challenge aside of a quarterly incentive, which can become predictable, might have any recommendations. So anytime there's linearity, generally some industries really push to get the last quarter, get the end of the quarter, get the orders in. And if you have discrete measurement periods, that will really cause there a spike at the end of each quarter. It drives the production people crazy. So remember, cumulative year to date will solve that problem, but it will not solve the problem of browbeating where the finance and the business units are saying, get that order in. What happens is orders get sucked from the first part of the quarter. They're jammed into the end of the quarter. So it's just not solvable with a compensation solution exclusively. It's partly a management issue, a management focus issue. Let's see here. Let me go down and see other questions that might have appeared. Are decelerators common above a certain percent attainment? This is Helen Rendo. Are decelerators common above a certain level of attainment? No, the answer is no, but they are justifiable. So we had this issue that we were talking about yesterday about mega orders. Yeah, in some instances, you might have a separate policy statement that only credits some of a large order to retiring quota. However, if it is a very common outcome, or there is instances where the order size is really not driven by the salesperson and it's implausible, then you might put a decelerator in. In other words, what a decelerator does, the incentive rate goes along, it increases, and then maybe at 140% of quota, it decreases. It doesn't cap, it decreases. Yes, you can do that, and you'll have a story, you'll have to get out there and sell it to the sales force. And generally, the way I've heard it done is, and it's not common, but I heard it done this way. Well, we hate the decelerator. We think that's unfair. Well, the alternative is a cap. We love the decelerator. Right on. We're right behind you. Another important thing is make sure that decelerator is not lower. Let me get this right. Not lower than the next commission rate at the next period, because what they'll do is hold the order over to the next period. Okay. So we have another question from Jessica Pillow. Do you typically find that sales operations or a sales compensation professional within HR set the design of the sales incentive plan? I'm all for collaboration, but it's a bit of a power struggle. So I ask in my survey, who's responsible for sales compensation? And normally the answers come back something like this, is that like 50% is sales operations, sales management, and like 35% is HR. And I don't like either of those answers. I want you to have a committee. I want you to have a committee that includes sales operations, that includes HR, includes a person from finance. And every year that committee has the charter to review the compensation programs. I don't want it to be a fight amongst those groups of people. There's a very logical, and one last comment, who really owns sales compensation? Ultimately, it's a sales program. It's part of their brick and mortar that holds them together. But I'm a big fan of HR managing, first of all, it's publishing the principles, managing the process, ensuring governance, and auditing, okay, and providing feedback. But my highest preference is to see that the teams are working in a collaborative fashion. Okay. All right, so let's see here. I think that kind of wraps up our questions. And so let me summarize what I just presented, okay? So I did a presentation called Building Codes. And building codes is this discussion about a set of principles. And you might say, good Lord, he went through those fast and the charts just went by really fast. That the point wasn't for you to learn all of those concepts right now. The point was to develop a set of principles at your company and create those principles that you use for design purposes. So you're not sitting there looking at some formula thinking, is this a good design or not a good design? Or the thing that I hate the most is tweaks. So we're going to tweak the account manager plan. We're going to change the threshold from 30% of quota to 45%. Okay, why? What's the principle that you're following? Remember, the principle is never pay for persuasion twice. Therefore, we set the threshold above assured revenue. Well, okay, so we need to have a policy statement that will actually address that, okay? So I had one more question, and this is from Rosita. For performance distributions that are U-shaped, how would one go about structuring a sales comp plan until the distribution changes? You know, something's going on there. I would suspect if you have a U-shaped pattern that, you know, you probably have two jobs there, and that something's got to be looked at, or the way the accounts are assigned. So again, summarizing, principles are used for designing sales compensation. These are well-tested principles. I have instructed these on a worldwide basis. No matter where you are on the planet, these principles apply, okay? And most companies, whether consciously or unconsciously, do find them. So thank you for joining my session. You can hear I'm passionate about it, okay? And I feel strongly about it. So, and again, if you have a detailed question that you'd like to have a conversation with me, please come into my booth at 4 o'clock. I'll stick around as long as somebody's there. And come on onto the video, and let's just talk about, what's happening at your company and what you'd like to address. Okay, so we're at break time. And remember, I'm encouraging you, just to give you the chance of winning something, is that you visit our vendor booths. This would be Verisent, Becom, and Verisent, Becom, and Open Symmetry, and get to their booth so you're involved in the drawing and have a chance to win something. And by the way, these people have a lot of experience in this subject, and so they're eager to share their knowledge, they're eager to share their views about things. So to take advantage of their professionalism. Okay, and so with that, thank you for joining me. We're going to be coming back with a case study from Open Symmetry, and I'm curious to hear how that goes, and it's going to be pretty exciting. So we'll be back at the 35 mark, and looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you.